Hi, I'm C.C. Péan, and this is Reclaiming Your Health. Good evening and welcome to Reclaiming Your Health. I am C.C. Péan, your resident chef. I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. This evening we are going to make a classic summer dish, especially if you're in the South. I'm going to let you all guess. So I'm going to name the ingredients that I have here and see if you can figure out what we're making this evening. I've got 3 beautiful, ripe Roma tomatoes. We've got some fresh okra. We've got some corn. We've got some lima beans, onion, garlic. We have some thyme and some vegetable broth to kind of bring it all together. A little bit of cumin. The lime might throw you off. And finally, we're going to use some field roast smoked apple sausage. Can you guess? Lima beans, corn, okra, and tomatoes. If you said succotash, you are absolutely correct. There are so many different things in this dish that are lovely and delicious all by themselves, but especially when they're brought together. And you know what's funny about this dish is growing up, I couldn't stand okra. Growing up, I couldn't stand lima beans. I even had an issue with cooked tomatoes for some time. But now, I love all of these things, and when they come together in a dish, the only thing you need to complete this would be a nice, fresh chunk of cornbread. So today we are going to make some Southern succotash with a little bit of Afkave Afro-Carib vegan twist to it. Right now what I'm doing is I boiled some water, and because we want to take the skin off of our tomatoes. So in order to get the skin off quickly and easily, what you want to do is your tomatoes, actually let's go into this camera. You're going to take a knife and you're going to just cut an X or a cross right there. We're going to do that for all 3 of these tomatoes. And the reason we're doing that is because when the boiling water or the hot water hits it, it's going to cause it to pull away from the actual meat. The skin is going to pull away from the meat. So I've got some water that was just boiling. Then I have some ice water because this is also part of what you need to do to get the skin off. So let me just move this out the way. Since we know we're going to be using this and we've got the time. So there's some ice water here. You want it to be really cold water because that's going to help shock it, stop it from cooking, and it's going to help get those skins off. So I'm going to drop my 3 tomatoes in here. I'm going to leave them in there for about, let's sing happy birthday a couple of times. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, succotash dish. Happy birthday to, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, succotash dish. Happy birthday to you. Okay. So that should be long enough for this hot water to do what it needs to do. And we're going to take it out now and just drop it in our ice water. And what that is going to do is it's going to cause the skin to peel back, and we'll be able to get to the meat of the tomato without the skin. Some people don't mind the skin. I really don't mind the skin. I really don't. But I want you all to know how to do this, so I'm showing you this process. Okay, so we're done with that. I'm gonna grab my other pan where I have about a tablespoon of avocado oil in there. We're just gonna let that warm up while the ice water does what it needs to do to these tomatoes. I will tell you, this is such a simple dish. One of the things I want to tell you, there are people, so I was saying earlier that I didn't used to like okra, I didn't used to like lima beans. Well, my father is West African, and okra was a really big thing in our house. So it was either I wasn't eating or I just had to get over it. Didn't say I didn't eat it, I didn't like it. So one of the tricks, there's two tricks that I've learned for okra. One of them is if you don't like the sliminess, but you want the health benefits, of which there are many, we will get into that, you can slice it up, lay it flat on a baking sheet, and bake it at about 400 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. What does that do? It dries up that sliminess of okra. That's one way to do it. Growing up, I always understood that if you bought really fresh young okra and you cut it with a sharp knife, that cut down some of the sliminess. Since I don't mind sliminess, I don't know that really works, but I would say in the oven that definitely works. Slice it thinly, but always buy fresh okra. You don't want to use something that's been around for a while. And you can tell because when you press it, it'll be very, very firm. If your fingers go into it easily, don't use that okra. So that is one of the tricks. But in this dish, that sliminess is a little good. So let's talk about that sliminess. What is so great about okra? Well, okra is mucilaginous. It is mucilaginous, which means it's slimy. Chia seeds are slimy. Flax seeds are slimy. And they all are great for us because they deal with your insulin levels. If you are someone who is dealing with diabetes, you want to have okra in your life. And I think I've even shared with you all, let's just get started cooking. I'm going to put in about a third of a cup of chopped onions. Okra can be eaten raw. And I know a lot of people make the joke, oh, I love fried okra. Okay, but that's not really what you want to do. It can be eaten raw. It can be sliced in half. You get some great seasoning on it and bake it, and it'll dry up a little bit. So you almost have like okra chips. You can drop okra right into your smoothie and get the health benefits from that. So if you don't like eating it just straight on, there are so many different things you can do. So we're sauteing our onions. We've got our 3 cloves of garlic because your girl loves garlic. A meal is not a meal without garlic for me. I'm going to let that saute a little more. While that's sauteing, let's take a look at our tomatoes. So, see how the skin is coming right off? All righty. The skin is coming off the tomatoes. So there you go. I'm sure I could have soaked it a little while longer, but it is coming off rather easily. And I'm going to tell on myself, y'all. I put these glasses on this evening because I didn't want to put on makeup, but I am nearsighted, so I can't see what I'm going to do. So guess who's taking off her glasses? No shame, no shame. This is smelling and looking great. Let's just get a little more of the skin off these tomatoes. And they're going to go into the pan because they do need to cook down. You want to soften them a bit. Okay. Top's coming off. These are really fresh tomatoes. We're not going to take the core out because we want that juiciness in this dish. So I'm just going to chop them, drop them in the pan. Drop it in the pan. Let's get to our next one. Pull the skin off. I always like to buy firm tomatoes. This is probably one of the dishes where you could get away with a tomato that's a little bit older. But I like to stick with firm tomatoes. Something else I wanted to say, something else that would take this dish to a whole nother level is if you do corn straight off the cob. Some really yummy summer corn straight off the cob. I don't like to cook my corn long at all because I like that crispy, crunchy freshness of corn. So that's another great thing about off the cob. You know, when you buy it frozen or if you buy it in a in a can, it's just not the same. I mean, I know they sell some that say, oh, summer crisp, corn and all that, but nothing beats that fresh corn off the cob. Nothing. I'm taking the skin off of these. Getting the skin off. I'm just gonna, you don't have to make these small pieces. So the last little bit that's gonna go in there. All right, so we've got our 3 tomatoes going in there. Dump this water. So now the next thing we're going to add to this, I'm going to put some of my fresh thyme in here. Can you all remember what spice I say I love to add whenever I use tomato? And I'm going to put these fully in here so they can just be taken out at the end. Can anybody think? I love to use cumin on tomato. This is giving me a hard time. Get in there, get in there. Okay. I love cumin. It just adds a level of warmth to it. And since we're not doing a super traditional succotash, I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put it directly on my tomatoes, just a few shakes of my cumin. Just brings out a really lovely flavor. So I'm going to let this cook down, not too much, not too much. Now, something I did beforehand was I did bring some salted water to a boil, and I cooked my lima beans for once it came to a boil again. So you bring your water to a boil, put in your frozen lima beans. Once it comes to a boil again, drop it down and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. I did that because it makes my cooking time so much faster and everything cooks evenly, right? So I did that beforehand. And of course, with the okra, I did the 400 degrees for about 15 minutes. So now that my tomato and my onions have cooked down and garlic, I'm going to put my okra straight in the pot. Just make sure this is well combined. I'm turning up my fire a little bit. This is smelling so good, y'all. So, so good. Let's turn that bad boy up. And I mentioned tonight that I'm using some field roast sausage. And I know you know that I'm somebody who quite frequently says, I don't like to use meat substitutes. I use them very rarely, but because of that, tonight we're using it, and this is such a lovely addition. This is actually my favorite variety. It is the smoked apple and sage plant-based sausage from Field Roast. I love to fix this. This is one of my favorite vegetarian meats. I have done sausage and peppers with this. I have used this in the morning with my Just Egg. I use it in this preparation. I've sliced it super thin and crisped it up a little bit in a pan and then put it on top of like a cauliflower crust pizza. Yum. It's really, really delicious. They have several varieties, but this is my favorite. Okay, so we've got our okra going here. Let's get back to that shot. And the next thing I'm going to add are my lima beans. Because that just has to be warmed through. And I want to keep some of the, crunchiness of my okra as well, since I already baked it in that hot oven. So I'm not trying to overdo it with that. All right, and second to last is our corn. Look at that beautiful. This is what we're doing again, is we're eating the rainbow, folk. We're eating the rainbow. That looks so yummy, doesn't it? Maybe we'll just use a little bit more corn. Just finish that out. All right, this is going to be so good. Something that I'm going to do now, which is a little unorthodox, I'm going to use a little lime juice and a little lime zest because I like how it just kind of brightens the dish a little bit. So just a squeeze for some brightness. And then I'm just going to zest this a little bit. Just a little bit of zest. Just a little trick that I've learned. And I like what it does. Got a little zest, a little lime juice in there. So what you would do now, there's a couple things you could do. I'm going to use a little bit of vegetable broth, but something that you could also do if you wanted is you could add a little bit of tomato juice. Just a little tomato juice. You can actually, one of these tomatoes, you could have kept it aside and you buzz it in your bullet or something like that, or your blender, or just a little bit of tomato juice. I'm going to use a little bit of vegetable broth just to get some like liquid. I'm going to let it come to that's probably about a quarter cup I use. I'm just going to let it kind of come to a fast simmer. I don't want it to boil, but a fast simmer. Just a tad more. We want to just give it a little bit of liquid so it can all come together. And then the last thing I'm going to add is my sausage. But this is looking great. I'm just going to cover this for a minute, just real quick. Put my lid on it. Just so we can kind of steam it through. That's why we put the lid on it, just so it captures the steam. I'm going to let that go for just a few minutes. Then we're going to get ready to plate this delicious dish. I'm going to taste it for salt. If you all have noticed, we haven't used any salt as yet. The broth is, it's a regular broth. It's not a low sodium broth. But there's definitely room for a little bit of salt, so we will be doing that. I don't know how many of you are okra lovers. There's so many different things you can do with okra. In my mom's culture, Guyanese culture, there's something that's called cook-up rice. And okra goes in that, and it's so good. Okra, coconut milk, gunga peas or pigeon peas, as some people know it, or black-eyed peas, or even the split yellow peas. Delicious, with okra as a key component. Okra and just tomatoes is something that's really delicious. Again, we've taken it up a notch by doing a more succotash-like dish. But okra is so good and it's so good for you. And you know what I tell people? When I was in culinary school, they said to us, you know, there could be things that you didn't like when you were growing up. You should retry those things. Every couple of years, try something that you didn't like before because your palate can change. And I am definitely an example of that. So I'm going to taste this and then I'm going to see if I need a little bit of salt. Get a little bit of the tomato, a little of the corn. That is delicious. I definitely can use a little salt. So I'm going to use a little salt. And I'm going to say this is probably the equivalent of a half teaspoon. Can you all remember what vegetable I mentioned is great to use to add saltiness if you want to avoid salt? Can you remember what it is? It is celery. Celery has a natural saltiness to it. Let's taste this again. Got a little lima bean in there now. That little bit of salt did it. The last thing we're going to do, I sliced up some of this sausage, pan fried it. I sprayed the pan, nonstick pan, fried this up, and now these are going to go right in here. And believe it or not, folks, we are ready to eat. This looks so good. Where is my piece of cornbread or my mound of quinoa? I'm just going to put this in my little bowl here. So good. There's some of the sliminess as I pick it up. You are seeing a little bit of that, but that's okay. There's so much going on. There's going to be such a party in your mouth. You're not even going to mind that. This looks so good. Looks so good. I'm trying to just make it a little pretty in this plate. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Well, folks, there you have a Southern Succotash vegan style. We have fresh okra, lima beans, we have corn, we have garlic, onion, fresh thyme. Use a little bit of cumin in here, squeeze of fresh lime, a little bit of zest, and field roast apple sausage. Here is our take on Southern Succotash. So let me taste the end result. I'm going to get a little bit of everything in this bite. That's delicious. That is delicious. Please try this dish. Try your little variations. Do what you want to do to make it different, make it yours. And let us know how it turned out. But this is our dish for the week. Southern Succotash. Yum, yum. See you next week. Bye-bye.